Well, good morning. Good morning. Another episode of the Real Estate Heavyweights podcast. I'm Ashton Hines, your host, one half of the Real Estate Heavyweights podcast. I'm here with my good friend, mentor, real estate guru in the DFW area, doing all sorts of stuff, residential, flips, midterm, short-term, commercial. It's Tavis Westbrook. What's going on, Tavis?
Yeah, it's Tavis. Travis without the R.
Oh my gosh,
Uh,
he's starting early.
well, I don't know. I get tired of just saying what's up, what's up. So
I know.
I
Yeah,
felt
that's
like I
right.
had to. I felt like I had to say something different this morning. So
Yeah, that's all right. Give it a little flair. That's okay. We have some loyal listeners. I'm sure they will appreciate a little bit of a mix up every once in a while. So, but
no,
we were,
yeah, no, it's good. You know, this week's been extremely busy, which is great. I mean, you want to be busy in this industry, so um, lots of moving parts. You know, and we talked a little bit last week just with midterms, and one of the biggest things with midterms is you don't know like when your next tenant's coming when you're vacant, so it's always a
right.
little nerve wracking, right? Like you build your pro forma, you know that you should have at least a 2 months vacancy kind of built in, and that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be 2 months altogether,
Yeah.
but it could be, right? So like the property I have here that we did this past year, um, that we talked about, just kind of getting it running. I had a tenant in there from like September till mid-November, and then it's been vacant for 2 months.
Mm,
And so it gets a little nerve-wracking. You're kind of like,
yeah.
okay, when's this next person coming? And then like
Yeah.
these freezes are happening, and you kind of get excited, and you're kind of like, all right, when's it coming? And then we had like 2 or 3 leads come through, and just weird stuff happens, right? You like kind of ink it, you set it up, you have the conversation, and then all of a sudden they disappear, and you're like,
Yeah.
where'd they go? And it's usually because there's like a disconnect between like the placement company and the insured that's panicking, that's in a rush, that needs to
Mm-hmm.
get into something, and somebody's not talking, or they're waiting on the adjuster. And then when they come back to me, they're like, "Oh, they found another place," or "Oh, they're on their own," or
Mm.
something like that happened. So it was frustrating. And then we finally got somebody last week, and it took a couple days for approval. But we got it. We got it locked and loaded, and they actually moved in. I don't even know if you and I had that conversation, but they ended up moving in on Saturday. So
Okay. Yeah. I
um,
know you talked about when, we've been kind of looking at stuff with Aaron, and I knew you had mentioned that they got in there. I didn't realize it because, I mean, you were getting nervous enough to where you had said the last time we talked about it, I think you said, I don't know, man, I'm kind of thinking about maybe selling Huntington. I don't know if it's like going to work out.
yeah,
I'm like, oh
yeah,
man, you just got it
and
done
that's
and
what
you
I
put it in
mean.
service and
That's what I mean. It's kind of like it's tough, because you kind of like and you start doing the analysis on it, and your cash in it, and looking back, and just trying to really run the analytics on it and go, all right, is this a keeper? Is this one that's going to perform? Because my
right.
projections, everything points in the right direction, but then you get kind of emotionally tied to it, because then you feel like, man, I've got $35,000 worth of furniture in here, that
Mm-hmm.
what happens to it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can get a storage. Yeah, I could put it in there. Yeah, I could look for the next deal. And like Tabitha was saying, let's put it in there, and then when you buy your next one, you already have it. Well, yeah, but when I buy my next one and values keep going up, so then I'm thinking in the back of my mind, well, where's the next one going to be if I buy
Yeah.
another midterm, and what's the price point going to be? And so,
Mm-hmm.
do
The
I
idea
need to
that it's going
just
to fit perfectly is going to,
right?
maybe,
So,
maybe
do I
not.
need to just be patient, hang in there? So, anyways, that worked out well. We got somebody in there.
Well, not to
It's
mention the weather is not helping you. I mean, you were waiting for stuff to happen in the, when you're going after insurance, when it freezes a lot, you're going to benefit from that. Well, it's
yep,
70 degrees the last few days. There's not a freeze in sight. And we don't have these big storms coming in, probably no,
right.
there's no floods, no roof leaks in anytime soon. it's not tornado season yet. Tavis is waiting for all these natural disasters to happen, and it's just beautiful outside. And no one's renting this place. He's like, man, what's going to happen? So no, I'm sure it is very nerve wracking.
And the other, so here, the lead into that was just saying a lot of moving parts this week because I've got a tenant moving out that, here's the benefit of this kind of business, right? I had somebody move into another property in Plano. It was our first one we did a little over 2 years ago, and they moved in May, and they originally said, hey, we'll be there 60 days. Well, they ended up being there over 7 months.
Wow.
So their lease ends tomorrow, and fortunately they had actually were able to get out yesterday, but their lease ends technically tomorrow. And then I got an inquiry yesterday, and they wanted to move in tomorrow. So I'm like, oh crap! So it's a 60-day plus deal. So literally, I'm not going to have any days gap on that one. We ended up inking it, booking it. So I've got to work on the lease and stuff this morning.
That's great.
And then of course it's like get on the phone with the cleaning crew, get on the phone with the painter, get on the phone with everybody. Like, okay, we got like 48 hours to make sure this is 100% ready for this new family to move in.
Yeah.
And again, it's just weird because there's not a lot of tracking metrics to know what's going on behind the scenes with these properties. Like literally, I think I did this on purpose. Is I released the date last week a couple days early because I have it built into where it has a buffer. So like typically somebody won't be able to book on the same day that there's cancellation. I give myself at least like 48-hour buffer so that I can clean it. Well, in this case, I knew they had told me they were moving out this past weekend. So I think I released the date a few days early, right, in Airbnb. And mind you, they were booked off market, but it's still, you block your calendar, right? So I released the dates a couple days early, and sure enough, it's like, almost the day on the money that it was available. As soon as it showed up available on the system, I get an inquiry.
Well, maybe at some point you start doing that, and you have some mechanism because, maybe the people that are in there, their house is ready, but maybe they're just trying to take their time to get into the new place. But if you offer like, hey, if I helped you pay for your move a little bit, could you go 2 or 3 days? Yeah, I've got someone else that wants to move in. Maybe you can offer something like that on the back end or something like that.
It's weird because, for instance, the person that reached out to me was not the insured. It was actually the placement company. And so again, it's just a weird dynamic. Like I said, it's hard to track the metrics. We talk about this from traditional real estate. The numbers that we talk about, right? 10 people in the door to get one offer. You can track it. It's trackable. It's like, what's the activity doing? If you have a traditional lease, how many showings am I getting, or how many inquiries, how many applications am I getting before, I'm going to book one? It's just a little bit more, there's a little bit more metric to it.
Yeah.
With this, it could be, it could be a bust, or it could be pull the trigger, I need to move in today. So it's just weird. But I just wanted to put that out there. Just that was, something that as we're doing it and talking about it, something people don't think about, don't understand,
Well, and we might touch on it here. My client, so I have paid for a few leads through a site called Bigger Pockets. It's an investment site. It's a great education site. I've mentioned it here before, but they have these preferred realtor. Basically, you can look up a local realtor if you're an investor and say, hey, I want to work with someone, reach out. So I got these leads. I've done it one other time. It wasn't really fruitful, but I honestly wasn't great at the follow-up. And so I didn't really blame it on them. But, I've told Tavis, a lot of the people on there, they're a little bit new in the process. And they contact me with this brilliant idea that if I could find them an off-market property that's, 60% below ARV, and they're willing to do owner financing and no money down, they would really be interested in doing this flip. I'm like, listen, if I had that deal, I would do it, So a lot of the people I haven't really been able to help out much because I'm like, I don't have this endless supply of off-market properties. And if I did, I would take advantage of it. So I went through this again. I got a client that contacted me. He's He's a local guy. He's looking to do a midterm rental, and he knew exactly what he wanted. He has 3 short-term rentals, 2 up in the Pigeon Forge and 1 in Broken Bow. He knows the industry, and it's just been great, and so we kind of hit the ground running looking for some midterm. He wants to do the higher midterm. So he's looking for a property ARV in the 800 to $1 million. And initially we were doing some sort of turnkey, but it's interesting because, we're looking for stuff that doesn't really have an HOA involved, because then we don't have to deal with those restrictions. But we also want something in a decent part of town that is going to maybe have some appreciation. So we found this great house down in Richardson near Canyon Creek. It's the Canyon Creek area. It's not the Richardson ISD, but so Tavis went by the other day with Aaron and I, walked the property. I think, Tavis, you're going to get to do some design work for him. And, he very much appreciated your 2 cents because you've done the midterm deal. So it's turned out to be this really cool development of finding an investor that wants to do the midterm stuff, getting to go through the process with him on the realtor side, but also seeing Tavis's thought process. So that's what I've been doing this week. And we're meeting out there today. He's got an interior designer that's coming in. He has a group that he's worked with before. So she's going to be helping him buy furniture and stuff here. So it's really cool. What's interesting about the real estate business, and I'll tell my home health people this, I'll have an 80-year-old lady at 2:00 in the afternoon say, "Am I your last one?" And I'll say, "No, I've got a few more," and I always say, if I had a tattoo, it'd say busy pays the bills, because it's true. They always the goal is to not be busy, and I mean, I'm not against retiring at some point, but I think I'll always be doing something. And what's interesting is I've been doing a lot of open houses for people. I've been contacting a lot of agents for these properties for Aaron. And it's insane to me how many agents out there seem to just almost from day one try to not do real estate. They immediately have people helping them, or I don't do that, or actually email this person, I don't deal with that, I don't work before 8. Maybe at some point you get big enough to where that, but I mean, you do a lot of business and you still handle a ton of stuff on your own, because I think you actually enjoy business and you enjoy real estate. And I've found that there's actually a lot of people in real estate that don't seem to actually enjoy real estate, and that they're always outsourcing and, I don't, it's just really weird to me. So this week has been fun, but also kind of eye-opening on that front.
My wife might disagree with you. She's like, Tavis is like the master delegator. So,
well,
but again, I think it goes back to, as you grow in your business, the 80-20 rule, makes a lot of sense. Right. And I think as entrepreneurs, we really struggle with that sometimes, because you really struggle to give away the 80% of your business that you're not as good at, you know. And I think as I've grown, I just kind of learned the things that I'm really good at and the things that I'm not really good at, or I don't have a lot of interest in. Right. So I've been very fortunate ever since I merged my business into Keller Williams back in 2009. I was introduced to a transaction coordinator at that time, and I was like, oh, this is freaking amazing.
Yeah.
So like getting into the KW systems and just, tracking, shoot, what do you call it? Basically your, how you
KPIs.
get paid.
Yeah.
Your commission,
yeah.
whatever they call that, right? Your CDA, commission
Yeah.
disbursement agreement, all of that. I've never done one, since I've been part of KW.
Yeah. And I get that.
I used to do all that independently. Like I did all that stuff, right? And I'm staying in touch with the title company, and I'm making sure, and I'm crossing my T's and dotting my I's, and so yeah, I used to do it. But once I got into this and I was introduced to that, I was like, man, this is great. I'm happy to leverage this and have somebody that's their specific job. That's what they do. They don't get distracted.
No, I'm not talking about paperwork and I like the transaction coordinator. Yeah. I'm talking about agents who either don't respond to text or phone calls or message. Like it's
right.
It's weird. It's like you have a house that's listed. I have questions about it, or they'll text you, "Hey, I'm busy. Just text me here." And I'm like, look, you're selling a $700,000 house. I have a client that's pretty serious. I just want to have a 5-minute conversation about, some details about the house. And I think people have just gotten so used to email and text. I have a client from the bigger pockets. She's supposedly interested in multifamily. She's interested in a $30 million apartment, supposedly, in the this off-market deal in the Dallas area, and she wanted some information on it. So I wanted to hop on a 5-minute call. She didn't. She wanted to email. I'm busy. Just email me. I'm like, look, you're in theory considering this huge purchase for on behalf of someone, but you don't have 5 minutes. It's just weird. Anyway,
Yeah.
so
I think people, I think the problem is people get to, and I understand it to some degree, because in some cases I get people that just want to talk and get on the phone. And then it's like, if you can tell me what you need, maybe I can point you in the right direction to get that
yeah,
information. I think that's where the disconnect is sometimes, where, it's like, and I'm guilty of that as well sometimes, just from a point of like, all right, what am I doing right now? What do I have going on in the middle of this? And what's this conversation going to lead into and be about? Right. And at the end of the day, we all know, realtors and real estate professionals like to talk. Hence what we do,
yeah,
and we talk, right? So I think it just kind of comes down to sometimes just being purposeful in that kind of communication, or hey, I have a couple questions, or I have some information, I have some questions about the property, because I got that. Like, I was fielding phone calls like that with my aunt and uncle's estate, and everything I could think of, I put in that,
yeah.
put
In
in the
the
MLS so people
disclosures
can
and
get the data.
right.
Or somebody would reach out and go, hey, I've got questions about the foundation, and I'd say refer to the engineer report. Again,
Yeah,
you kind of do that because, again, I don't want somebody to take my words and twist it or get my opinion when I've got a professional's opinion already there.
sure.
Take the information to do with what you want. Now, I was happy if they got past that, or somebody said, hey, I read the engineer report. We understand this. I want to have a conversation with you. My client's interested, but I've got some specific questions. Okay, great.
Yeah.
Let's talk. So I think it's just sometimes just that level of communication. But I agree with you. There's definitely people out there. I think the most frustrating thing is like what you just experienced, right? You put together a bona fide offer. You're very thorough. You put together the entire thing. You've got a bona fide, agent or a buyer that you're representing. I feel like the offer was fair, even though they felt like it was a low offer. I feel like it was very fair based on the condition of the property, based on the price point, based on everything, and you know that deserves a response.
Hmm.
And the fact that you didn't get a response, I mean, we know he was traveling, but
Yeah. It took a
come
little
on,
while.
man.
Yeah. I
I mean, if
texted.
you're in business and you gotta,
Yeah.
you've got a listing. I don't care how many listings you have. If you get an offer across your email, we all have smartphones these days. We can all
Yeah.
check our cell phones from anywhere in the world. There's rarely anywhere now that you don't have service, for the most part, unless you're up in the mountains somewhere,
Hmm. Yeah. I
with
think
no
it was
signal.
close to, I mean, it was probably 15 hours easy from the time that like we went and saw it. I called, I texted, had some questions. We made an offer. I texted him. I called him to let him know we sent the offer. Obviously, the email came through. Then the next day, I followed up, and finally, I got the response received. It was just like, all right, well, that's fine. And it's gone well since then. He was
Yeah.
travel. But anyway, so let's. All right, so let's just really quickly go to our market update. The Dallas market is still at 2 months supply. What's interesting is our MLS has this tax dashboard, and it has a little heat map, and for them it says 2 months supply is right in the middle. We're right, a level buyer and seller market, which you would think it by the numbers we're still a little bit of a seller's market, but it is what it is. 2 months supply on the markets they're looking at. The overall Dallas County, Collin, Tarrant, and Denton is a 41-day average, which is up 20%. It definitely is creeping up. And we're at 96% of the sales price per original, versus the original price. So those are things that we've been tracking. Haven't moved. The biggest thing that's moved since we started this podcast is days on market. I mean, we were under 30 pretty much across the board in all of our counties, and now our average is getting up close to 40. And I'm looking at a house for another guy that's on the higher end, and we pulled it yesterday and it was 77 in this one little pocket. It's a little bit of a higher end part of town and kind of a narrow segment, but 77 days on the market. So that's interesting. It's definitely slow. We're kind of gridlocked because the rates. I will say this though, as far as rates go, I don't think I told you this. Aaron was able to buy down his rate for $900. He was able to lock in a rate last night for 5.75. Pretty
Really?
insane. Yeah. So really good rate. He's doing his VA loan. But Dave, my mortgage guy, a whiz kid on the ones and twos when it comes to figuring out all the pieces to put together for the mortgage stuff, locked him in at 5.75 for only $900
Wow.
buy down. So pretty great,
Wow.
So
That's
hopefully
awesome.
rates
And
are
that's
creeping down. Yeah.
in government program, with
Yeah.
VA.
Take advantage of it.
Obviously great credit scores and all of that, and
Yep.
good assets and
Yeah.
but amazing, to lock that in. So,
Yeah.
and that was a tricky thing too. We were talking about that a little bit. People have a stigma in the market when they get like a government or a contract with like a government backed, uh, lending situation, right? VA, FHA, people get that stigma. Um, and in this case, this is a very smart gentleman that's very established. He's a surgeon. He's in really good sorts financially. But he wrote the offer with a VA loan because he can use it for 100%, and then he can use
Mm-hmm.
cash for renovations, etc.
Yep.
Why not use that leverage, right? And he's going to live in the house. He's going to occupy it himself. He's going to house hack it. So, um, but you get the stigma that comes across with that, and I'm guilty too. Over my years of it, you get different offers. Sometimes you're like, oh, what is this?
Right.
But I think it's important just to really back it up and document it. And we talked about that a little bit, just when you submitted that and just having the conversation, like, hey, just because he's using this loan, I mean, look at it.
Yeah.
There's a reason, 5.75%. Come on, man, wake
Yeah.
up.
Who would? Yeah.
This is
Who would
this
not
is why
want that?
this is why he's doing this. He's
Yeah.
using it as a tool here.
Mm-hmm.
So this is
Not
not
as
a
a last
negative thing.
resort. Yeah.
This
Not
is
as a
not
last
a
resort.
negative stigma here. This is what he's doing.
For
So
sure. Yeah. So I was really excited for him on that. But yeah, the market's a little bit locked up. We keep waiting for it. If the rates start dipping a little bit, I think the activity will pick up. I'm doing my 100 open house push for the year. I've got 5 under my pocket or under my belt. I'm going into number 6 and hopefully number 7 this weekend. So I'm out there, trying to meet people, trying to meet these buyers that are looking. I know at least a couple of my buyers were coming in from out of state. They had been renting, or the people I've been talking to over there. And then I know one of them was looking for a house for their mother that was looking for a downsized house. So you're still not getting a lot of these lateral, just arbitrary movements. Hey, let's go, across town because we want a pool. It seems like there's still a lot of the life change type stuff is drawing people in the market. But I think we'll start to see some movement if we can dip a little bit. So, all right, let's get into our news. So, a little bit of news, and I don't know a lot about cost segregation and bonus depreciation, but it is in the news this week that if you are an investor, the Congress has bipartisan support because most of your Congress folks have property. They are wealthier individuals. I'm sure they have vested interest in the real estate market and investment properties. So it turns out when you are dealing with their money, they can agree on things. And so they are actually talking about voting on extending the bonus depreciation to 100%. And I don't know all the details, but basically what this comes down to is if you own investment properties, specifically short term and some of your other rentals, it gets, there's all sorts of details as far as the schedules on what you can depreciate. But the long story short is every item is a finite piece of material. You can depreciate it over a certain period of time. Sometimes it's 27 and a half years. Sometimes it's 39 years. The IRS has all these different rules. But if you do straight line depreciation, then you divide up, let's say, the cost of this carpet, and you can divide that over little bits every year you can depreciate. Well, the IRS also says if you do it the right way, get a certain cost segregation study, you have to follow certain steps, you can front load that depreciation and offset your ordinary income. So if you have a really high year of ordinary income, of your normal job, or you have a lot of rents coming in or whatever, you can offset that with this depreciation. So you've never done a cost segregation study, have you, Tavis?
No, I haven't. And I have been challenged with this almost every year. We talk about it and everything else, and um, I think it's important to have somebody that obviously you've got professionals that do just cost seg and
Yeah.
don't do your taxes, and then you have your taxes, your CPA, et cetera. And so usually you kind of uh, put those two people together, and I think what's worked for me, or what's resonated with me. I think it's a great tool. It can be phenomenal. You hear huge things about it, right? And tax offsets and things like that. Um, and I've considered it, but I've also had a conversation with my CPA, and based on some other things and the way that we're set up and structured, and our tax savings for the years, and Tabitha being W-2'd, and um, us having a couple different entities, um, you know, we do pretty well with our tax, our tax analysis, and what we pay in the taxes at the end of the year. So all that being said, I think there's a fine line sometimes of digging too deep sometimes, and getting that microscope from the IRS that really dives in
Mm.
and gets into an audit and things like that sometimes. And so we haven't done it yet, just because we haven't really needed it.
Yeah.
In the sense that I think if we do it, we actually end up, where the IRS is going to pay us money. And I
Mm.
think that, in some sense, kind of throws up some different red flags. So we just haven't had the necessity for it yet. Fortunately, I think as I keep buying properties every year and adding to the portfolio, that helps, right?
Yeah.
And we also have the, you know, the big value add properties that we do. So there's a lot of expense going out to those properties in the
Yeah.
front end. So all that helps offset with our type of investments that we have personally. So I haven't had the need for it, but I think
Yeah.
it's a very valuable need for a lot of people out there in their portfolio. Obviously, we have the commercial property; it could benefit that. There's different incidents where if you plan to sell the property, within 5 years, then you're going to have to essentially pay some of that back, um, and
Yeah.
things
As a
like that. So that
recapture.
there's
Yep.
all different elements that you just have to really talk to a professional and sit down and have a conversation if it fits for you, and
Yeah,
it's not
for
for
sure.
everybody. And I think that's where it's just been for us. Like I understand it. I think there's a lot of benefits, but it hasn't been a necessity for us yet, and
Yeah.
maybe it will be. I did learn that it was great to have that retroactive um, thing. Like, let's say that this new projection doesn't get, let's say that they vote on it and it doesn't pass, right? It goes to the 80% versus 100%. Um, then anything I've bought within the time period that was allowed, we can go back
Yeah.
and do a study backwards, right? Or do it backwards because of the time frame that I bought the property in.
Right.
So
You
that's
can always
always
use it.
exactly. We could go back and we could adjust and we could do it if we needed to. So,
Yeah.
anyways,
Well, that's in the news, so pay attention to that. And I think it probably will pass because evidently it has a lot of support. And then they'll keep that 100% bonus depreciation. So when you hear that in the news, that's what they're talking about. Also, locally, we have talked about the Mavericks and the fact that Mark Cuban sold a large portion of the Mavericks to the Sands Corporation family, the Adelson family. And a few weeks back, it was found out that they purchased a very large tract of land over in Irving, and everyone thought, oh yeah, that's where the Mavericks are going. Well, not so fast, my friend. Evidently, this week they have also purchased a good bit of property from Mark Cuban, where the current practice facility is on, and basically we're right around where the Mavericks are located now. And it seems like, turns out, smart business people will do smart business things, and it might be that they are basically giving themselves at least two options for when it comes time to negotiate with the cities for taxes, for different incentives, that sort of thing. They have two viable options where they can say, well, we can go here, we can go here. Let's figure out which is going to be best for us. And so I think we won't know that for a few years. But I do think that the lease is up somewhere in the 2030, 2031. So obviously they would want to start making moves before then. But, for a little while, it did look like, oh, the Mavs are going to be going to the Irving area. Well, actually, it might stay right about where it is now. And Tavis can go to the Mavericks games as normal, leave around 5 o'clock, get down there, have some wings and a beer, and then walk over to the Mavericks game, which is a lot of fun. So
Yep.
hopefully you won't be having to drive to Irving to go to your Mavericks games anytime soon. Well, good deal. So on our topic, normally in this segment, we talk a little bit about real estate. We, the top 24, colors of blue for the season or stuff like that. Last week we talked about cabinets, and I think people actually really enjoyed that. We put a little video out about that, and that got more hits on our video about cabinets than we've had in a while. So
Really?
it's
Oh, wow.
yeah, it's kind of funny. Tavis had a lot to say about cabinets, and it's a lot of fun because it really is a way for you to refresh a look in the kitchen or bathrooms, and you can go everything from custom to redoing the front doors, and there's a lot of hardware options. So if you have not listened to that yet, go back and listen because it was a cool conversation. But I talked about Bigger Pockets. I was listening to their economics podcast, and on there they actually brought up this idea that I don't remember how long ago. It wasn't that long ago, and they had done a study where it was over 50%. I think it was something like 58% of people considered it a necessity or a definite benefit to go to college. And now that number is down into the low 30s. And it's just more and more millennials and this Gen Z are changing their mind, as millennials as parents and Gen Z as the people going into college as the importance of college. And so Tavis has a son that's graduating this year. I have a son that's graduating this year. And I know, Landon has expressed some interest in real estate. Luke actually just started his real estate agent courses online. He came to us several months ago and said, I just don't really think college is for me. We talked about maybe getting an appraiser license, but he was not passionate about that. And so we've basically just said, look, we're going to support you on what you want. It's not easy, but if you want to do real estate as far as an agent goes, then let's go for it. So I just want to, from a dad perspective, from a real estate perspective, what are your thoughts on college? I don't know your background as far as that goes. I don't know that you ever took classes or you did, or you have a master's in real estate from Harvard. I don't know that part of your story, Tavis. So what are your thoughts on college and doing real estate?
It's tough. It's tough for me because I didn't go to college. So, I think anything you do right is about the amount of effort you put into something and doing it well. So I think going to college. If you're going to go to college, I think it's about being dialed in, being excited to go through the steps. And a lot of people go into college don't know exactly what they're going to do or what their major is going to be, but they go in for the experience and then they build off of that, and they go in with a passion to do it well. And I think that there's a big group of people that go to college because that's what they've been told is the next thing to do, and they go do it and they don't enjoy it, and there's nobody holding you accountable at that point. um, your parents may have access to your grades or something, but at the end of the day, it's not like it is in high school. And so I worry about that with with Landon, because I think he's not passionate about the academic side. I think his main goal to go to college is to play basketball,
Yeah.
and uh, the opportunities with that obviously are very, very far and in between. Um, but he loves the sport, and as far as dedication goes, and driving mobility and putting in the work when it comes to something he loves, like basketball. He's been doing it since he was 4 or 5 years old.
Yeah.
If he could just do basketball all day, I think he would be great with that. But
Right.
the reality is that college is about the academic side of what you're going to learn and the degree you're going to get, and and basketball essentially is the byproduct.
Yeah.
even if you were to make it to MBA, you should still get a degree out of it, right? If you went to college. Um, so, I don't know. I struggle with it. I think it's creeping up on us pretty quick now. We're a couple months out from graduation,
Yep.
and I think uh, just like anybody, I think growing up, you don't necessarily have a passion to do what your parents are doing.
Mm-hmm.
Landon, when he was younger, used to want to go to job sites and things like that. Then it became more of a, oh, Dad, why are we here? Why did we stop here? Why
Yeah.
are we going to this house? Like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
And I used to be like, even today, like he'll be in the truck with me or something, and we're stopping at a job. He's like, "What are we doing, Dad?" And I'm like, "I got
Yeah.
to check on this job. You want to go in? You want to check it
Yeah.
out?" No, I'm
Yeah.
staying in the truck. So it's just
What you need to do, so Bob Sturm is a sports guy on the ticket, and he tells a story. So he's really into sports, watches sports all the time, only talks about sports, and evidently fairly early on, he got some pushback from home, and he said, "All right, let's go outside for a sec." So he walked outside, and they turned around and looked at the house. He said, "I want you to realize, sports bought this, and
yeah,
his life is sports, and so." Maybe at some point you can kind of, say, "Hey, I appreciate your desires, but the real estate bought this. If you enjoy your
yeah,
life." Yeah.
yeah,
So yeah, I mean, for me, it's interesting because I've worked backwards in my life because I went to college. My dad did not go to college. My mom did. So whenever I got accepted into Pepperdine out in California at the time, it was one of the best colleges, top 50 college in the country, and I got some really good scholarships to go there. And I worked on that, but I worked in the nonprofit world. No one ever told me, "Hey, you're going to take on a bunch of debt. Maybe not a great idea to go work in the nonprofit world." No one tells you that. They
yeah,
just they take your
yeah,
money and you pay it off, and they don't care. And now, did I learn a lot of social skills there? Yes, I still have friends that I keep in contact with from college. So it's hard to divorce yourself from what did you learn? What part of that, molded me now? So it's really hard. But from an actual degree standpoint, I had a communications degree and I worked in the nonprofit world. And it cost me a lot of money. And then after a while, I said, well, I want to do better for myself and family. I'm going to go back to therapy school. Well, I went back and got a 2-year degree, an associate's degree as a physical therapist assistant. So I worked backwards a little bit. So for the last 10 years, I've worked as a physical therapist assistant on an associate's degree. And I made more money than I made in my nonprofit world, a lot more. And
yeah,
so then 3 years ago, I said, well, I want to do better. So I went and got a real estate agent license, which is like, 6 months, $1,000 or whatever it is. It's such a low barrier to entry, and a lot of people get into it. And so now I'm doing that. And so for me, and I have some other friends whose kids are trying to get into A&M. I mean, there's 60,000, 70,000 people at A&M. If you get accepted, they actually will only accept you in certain degrees, and you have to stay within that. So even if you go to A&M, it's not like the old days where you can say, well, I don't love this, I'm going to change. No, they have room in that one school for you. They don't have
hmm
room in this other school. So if you change, you can't really change. So to me, it's just the value proposition of college from an actual skill set perspective is not there unless you are doing medical or engineering or architecture. There's certain things that you have to do. And I think being a lawyer, there's certain things that are great. But from a real estate standpoint, the more I'm in the business, to me, it's just about effort. It's
hmm
about learning how to learn. That's a huge thing. Learn how to learn, identify the things you're not good at, figure out ways to go figure those out, whether it's YouTube or podcast or being around people that know more or paying for a class or a mentorship or a coach or whatever. Learning how to learn is such a huge, that skill set will serve you for the rest of your life. And then it's just effort, and it's just putting in the time and trying. And I think if you're willing to do that, I don't necessarily think you need the degree. And so, I'm super supportive of Luke. And, I'm sure Landon could, once he's passionate about basketball, whether it's a degree or not, if he puts in the work, he can be successful being a coach, private teacher,
yeah.
AEU coach or whatever, So
Well, I think
anyway,
that's the I think that's the key, right? Is taking if he takes that mindset, if he takes that effort and that mindset, and anything he chooses to do going forward, and uses the same skill set that he's built in the basketball sector, and converts that into something else that he's enjoying doing, he's obviously going to succeed, right? Because he's got the ability to put forth his mind into something, and understands hard work, and understands dedication, and understands discipline, right? And I think that is a huge thing. We talked about that a little bit in the investor club last week. One of the biggest things when you get dedicated in this business, and then now we're talking wealth building, it's discipline. It's finding that discipline within yourself
Yeah.
to make changes in the right direction,
Yeah.
to get you where you want to go. And I think that's the ultimate solution, right? And we've seen that. I mean, we've seen it, with college students that start off rough, and then snap into it, or maybe they don't start their college career until their late 20s, maybe.
Yeah.
And once you get it, once you get passionate about it, like, look, me in grade school, I did what I had to do to get by. For me, graduating high school was kind of just like, I have to do this, right? Like, I have no other choice. I've got to graduate, and then what?
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it was almost like the license of freedom. Like,
Yeah.
the way I grew up, I'm the third out of eight. It was a lot of responsibility. Um, it was a lot, right? Growing up, and it wasn't usually my choice and what I got to do with my free time. In that big of a family, and so for me, the idea of graduating and being out on my own was freedom. And so it was just like, give me my diploma. I don't
Yeah.
care what it
Let's
is. I
go.
don't know about college. It was like, I used to say, I'll go to college if I get an art scholarship.
Yeah.
I didn't know what that meant. I was passionate about art, but I didn't know how to convert it. I didn't know. I never filled out anything, right? Like, it
Yeah.
was just like, well, we talk about it, and then of course you got community college as an option, and and everybody was in my ear all the time, like, hey, are you going to go to school? Are you going to go to college? What are you going to do? And I jumped out, and I started pulling cable for a company out of Austin. And this was the .com boom, and I'm pulling Cat 5 cable, but I was passionate about working. I always had
Mm-hmm.
no issue, especially when it came to like effort of labor, like,
Yeah.
and I was willing to
Work.
learn something new and go do it. And
Yep.
so um, that was where I started, $8 an hour, and did that. And then I eventually worked myself up into, uh, telecom, and was able to get hired by, a huge corporation, MCI WorldCom at the time. And then, that went through its craziness. And, but then, at 24, I was already looking for a career change. I'm like, hey, I fell into this by default. I just feel like, where am I going to go from here? I'm not, I'm passionate about what I'm doing in my job, but it's where's the future?
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't I wasn't passionate about what I was doing. It was just,
Yeah.
it was a job, it was a career, it was how I was making money. And of course I was going to go do it with full effort, but I was like, where do I go from here? How do I go up? And,
Yeah.
management
Well,
was like the next step, but,
yeah.
and
But
anyways,
I think the big
career
difference
change.
too is, you taught yourself that you can shift gears and make it work. That internal knowledge that knows if something happens, I can figure it out. That is the life skill that you can't teach anywhere. And sometimes that's shifting from, my nonprofit work to this, this to this, therapy to this, but that shift, and then that, figure, you're like, okay, I can pay my bills. I can figure this out. That'll make you feel 10 feet tall.
Yeah.
When you feel like you're beholden to whatever you're in because you don't really know how to do it otherwise, that's tough. And I think, college in a lot of ways teaches you how to be a worker bee, and that's fine. But if even outside of college, if you want to become an entrepreneur or own your own company, they don't teach a lot of that stuff. A lot of that stuff is stuff you learn on the job. So if you just fast forward and you're okay with being a worker bee by painting fences or pulling Cat 5 or, doing demo work or whatever Luke's going to do to kind of make money until he can
Yeah.
figure out the entrepreneur
Well,
grind and all that stuff, then, everyone has their own path.
I think the other big thing, I know we're running out of
We're running
time
a little
here,
long.
but
Yeah.
The other big thing to me that I think is what I'm hearing from your story and just knowing from my own story. And I've had this conversation with, my older son. I've got a son who's almost 30. And then, of course, Landon, who's 18, who's about to graduate. And I think the tough thing in society and the world we live in where, you've got these people that become influencers and make stupid money for doing very little effort, and they've just blown up success overnight. And back then, I think for us, the people that did that were, yeah, I mean, you would see musicians and stuff like that,
Yeah.
And you having musical ability, the amount of work that actually goes into that behind the scenes. But I think what happens is, people aren't willing to start over sometimes, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the piece that I'm hearing from your story, and kind of just even to myself, is like sometimes you got to be willing to just, you know, cut your losses, take
Mm-hmm.
a pay cut, reinvent yourself and start over, um, and do whatever it takes to go be in that circle that you want to be in. Once you kind of
Mm-hmm.
see something that you're like, hey, I want to change gears. I want to get into real estate, or I want to learn how to flip a house, or I want to do this. It's like, what am I willing to do to make the connectors? And that's kind of like you talked about it in the past, just you being persistent about, connecting with me,
Mm-hmm.
of just willing to do whatever it took to, to have conversations and have something a little bit more in depth. And you were already doing this before, you and I have built a deeper relationship, but just, you know, taking that step and be willing
Yeah.
to humble yourself in a scenario to say, I'm willing to take a step back, put all my ego aside, and just learn and grow and absorb and take action. I
Yeah.
think that's the key. So, I those are tough things to teach, right? Those are tough things
Sometimes it just
that
takes
are
life.
hard to, and it's hard to teach our kids that.
Yep.
It
It
really
just
is,
takes
because
time.
our kids, we want our kids to have a good life. We want our kids to not, struggle day to day. We want our kids to not have to experience some of the turmoil and the hardships that we had growing up. And so we make their lives fairly easy. But then when it comes to like trying to teach them a lesson, it's tough sometimes for them to
Yeah.
really absorb it and get it. And then, being patient with their ability to learn these lessons, and when they're ready to make these
Yeah.
choices, excuse me, is another big
Yeah. Yeah. But, it's
lesson,
just the
just as
nature of things, it's just,
parents, right? Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I totally agree. But it's like when you realize that if you want, it's like saying, I want a lasagna to be awesome, but I want to kind of forego the whole cooking part. No, it takes heat. It takes effort. That is a part of the process. You know what I'm saying? It's
Yeah.
like you cannot forego that despite you want to, if you, no matter what you hope that you can't get around it. And so I think that for me and you, I think the hardest part is going to be okay with the struggle. You letting them kind of get out there and fail a little bit. And, I mean, we can definitely talk about this more because, I'm passionate about it. We're both on the forefront of this as they're kind of shifting gears, and Luke's probably going to leave. Well, he is going to leave for the summer and then come back and, work with me, or, we may team him up with someone over at Keller Williams just to get some different experience or something. So, anyway, it's a lot of fun to think about. It's emotional. I'm a softie. I've cried multiple times, thinking about all this. And so, anyway, I'm glad to hear your perspective too. So if you have not yet, please share this podcast with a friend. We are getting a little momentum on the number of people that are listening, and it's exciting to see that people are kind of sticking with us and sharing it here and there. So, text it to a friend, let them know about us. We're going to stick around. We've had a couple interviews kind of fall through. We had one last week that didn't record right. We couldn't salvage it. We had another one lined up for this morning, and on their end, the technology just didn't line up. So we're going to figure it out, but we're going to keep coming to you. You can find me, the Dallas Real Estate Guy, on Instagram, Facebook, Ashton Hines, Tavis Westbrook, Travis without the R, Tavis Westbrook Designs. He's on Instagram, Facebook, can help you out in a lot of different ways. Tavis has been walking a lot of properties. We're actually going to walk a property today in Canyon Creek for a realtor. Tavis has paid over $1 million in realtor commissions since he has started working with realtors to buy properties. And so he's the real deal as far as that goes. And we are definitely looking for properties to flip. So if you've got one that's not great for the MLS, you just need to get rid of it quick, and you still want to get paid and you're a realtor, please give us a call. Until the next time, our next interview, we will come to you. It's been great. Thank you so much for joining us, and hope you have a great day.